you're getting by with LSR.
Work is done for the day, so now we are here for you.
Decompress, celebrate, and pat yourself on the back.
Our radio station can be your post-work treat.
This is Leeds Student Radio, filling your eardrums with what matters.
Listen live on thisislsr.com.
Or tell your smart speaker, play Leeds Student Radio.
Hello and welcome back. This is Poetry Generator. And today we're going to... Well, first of all, I'm one of your hosts, Thomas.
I'm Henry.
I'm Leo.
And I'm Hal.
And thank you for joining us. Today we're going to be discussing the movement, which I always thought was a very unuseful, vague name.
Yeah.
You know, you needed some kind of adjective or noun behind.
Yeah, it doesn't help
It's
at all.
subversive.
Tom, do you know
Well,
why they called it just the movement?
I have a theory. Why don't you tell me...
Wasn't it a critic, though? I don't think they labeled themselves that.
Yeah, and I mean, that's often the case with these things. People don't usually give themselves these titles, but... can I tell you my theory, and then you'll tell me the real reason? My theory is that... So I'm out of breath because I ran here. Everything the movement embodied was a return to simplicity, and which is what's something we're going to get into. Is it was a rejection of a lot of things that characterize modernism. So, lofty metaphysical ideals, philosophical ideals, experimental, very verbose language.
References to other texts.
Methodological references, which obviously is very commonplace in modernism. It did away with a lot of these features and instead focused on highlighting everyday scenes, everyday themes, universal themes, with minimalist imagery and minimalist language. And there's also, I think, a strain of pessimism and realism that runs throughout it, which we'll get into. So to me, that the title "Movement" is almost like you've stripped away everything that could make this sound something more important than it really is.
Do you know what's really funny?
What is the real reason that they call it the movement?
The next movement after the movement was called the group.
Really?
Yeah.
And then the band The came around.
And there's the band, and then there's the
And then there's the My new band, Believe.
Yeah.
So this movement, of course, happened post-war. It was something that was, well, like Henry said earlier, it didn't really, it wasn't referred to as a movement while it was occurring, but then there was a person who published an anthology, I think sometime in the early 60s, maybe late 50s, and they referred to these collections of poems that belonged to this group of writers, all of whom were English, as the movement, literary movement. And that's where we get the name from. The most notable names, which is what will be the focus of today's episode, is of course Philip Larkin, who many people know, and
Kingsley Amis,
father of the extremely famous novelist Martin Amis. And apparently this is something that maybe I'm sure you know about more than I because you researched him, but the two apparently had a very strange relationship. Kingsley and Martin, father and son. Apparently they had quite a competitive relationship in terms of their writing, which you don't see a lot.
No.
You know. But perhaps we'll start with Philip.
Yeah.
Should I begin then, or do you have anything to say, Henry?
Do you want to begin? Oh yeah.
I can begin if you like.
Okay, why it was actually called the movement?
Oh yes, enlighten us.
It was coined in a literary magazine by a guy called J.D. Scott, and what he did was, it was not a movement, it was the movement.
Oh, I see.
He didn't want it to just call it just like one of like the isms at the time.
Henry, I'm not sure your microphone is
Hello?
coming through. Yeah.
Hello? Oh shoot.
Yeah, it's not.
Are any of our microphones coming through?
Yours is.
Mine. Okay, well, I've done most of the talking, so
Well,
Dude,
is mine...
Well, let's just...
Oh, wait.
Hello? Hello?
Okay.
If you shout, you
might
get
have to
some.
turn up the activity on that.
Okay, well, sorry about that.
Oh, wait. Hello?
There's a bit of noise.
I can hardly hear the microphone.
Okay, guys.
Shh. Okay. With that in mind, I'm going to proceed because I know my microphone is working. So, I'll fill you in a little bit about Philip Larkin. He was born in Coventry to a middle-class family in 1922. Very foreboding to be born in the early 20s. You know what that means later on, don't you? It means you're going to war. He showed an interest in literature from a very young age. He was an avid reader as a child, and he contributed to his high school's literary magazine. However, I don't think we have any surviving copies of what was written in it. His father was a kind of an eccentric person. He was self-made, so I think maybe a generation or two before, they had come from pretty humble beginnings, working class beginnings. And his father was a kind of entrepreneurial businessman of sorts, and he was able to provide a pretty good life for his son and wife. However, interestingly, he was also quite a fan of the Nazis. Oh. And he thought this, I guess, and this is what's interesting, is as we'll get into, in Larkin you see a rejection of a lot of modernist things and a kind of a yearning for traditional simplicity. And perhaps he gets that from his father, because his father said, well, there's democracy, mass, and whatever, and everything is commercial and consumerist. I like a nice authoritarian regime with family values. So he was quite a sympathizer of the Nazis. Okay. And he brought the young Philip on a tour of Germany I guess it must have been in the early 30s, during his teenage years, prior to the deterioration of Anglo-German relations. Of course, once the actual war began, him and every other self-respecting Brit said, okay, well, no, these people are clearly not somebody who we want to emulate. But besides this brief visit, it appears that the young Larkin, or the Larkin in general, never really traveled abroad again. He was a homebody. And he didn't actually have that interesting of a life, which is perhaps quite fitting with the nature of his work. He did go study at Oxford, and he did quite well there. He actually achieved first-class honors. And he met future writer Kingsley Amis there. So the two knew each other from quite a young age. After graduating, he went on to work as a librarian at various colleges. He avoided the draft because he had glasses and he had quite poor eyesight, so he actually didn't have to go fight, unlike most of his friends. And he worked in Shropshire, University of Belfast, and then I think he worked in University of Leicester as well. But he eventually ended up as a librarian at the University of Hull in 1955, so he would have been, what, 30? Mid-30s? 33, I suppose. Yeah. And he worked that job for the rest of his life. That's his whole life. He was a librarian at the University of Hull. He became head librarian naturally over time. And he never left Hull. And he appears to have enjoyed it. He liked librarian work. He liked the quiet pace of it, the fact that it gave him time to think. He didn't really enjoy being in the public eye at all. Of course, he never really got famous towards the end of his life, until the end of his life. But he did begin publishing right around the same time he arrived in Hull. So in his early 30s, late 20s, he begins publishing his first poems. Right away, there's a departure from modernism. There's a rejection of, Dylan Thomas, for one, who was hugely popular at the time. They're very unpretentious, I would say. And he also, not many people know about this anymore, but he wrote 2 novels too, because he's thought of as just purely a poet, but he wrote 2 novels at this time. Neither of them did particularly well commercially. I don't know what the critical appraisal of them is now. I'm not sure. But regardless, he never really seems to have attempted to write a novel thereafter. He just went to poetry and stayed with that. What else can I tell you that's interesting about him? Well, being a defining member of the movement, there was a lack of mythological references. There's a lack of experimental languages in his poetry. There's, like I said, a particularly British variety of pessimism, the hum and glum of suburban middle-class life, the kind of disappointment that inevitably returns, the ennui. That, let's be honest, folks, this is how it is, isn't it? And so he captured that, and for some reason, people seem to enjoy reading about that.
Commiserating.
Maybe it is commiserating, but he was also a bit of a romantic for certain things. For one, jazz. He loved traditional jazz, the old, Sidney Bechet, Louis Armstrong, King Oliver jazz. He didn't like modern jazz. He was not a fan of the modal John Coltrane, Miles Davis stuff. He said it had no swing, it had no soul. He liked pre-bebop stuff, you know. And he had quite an extensive jazz library, I believe.
Yeah, he was a prominent jazz critic, I
He's a critic as well, was he?
Occupations, yeah. And when he was in Oxford, one of him. Wait, does it work? Dude,
I think maybe you have to put it
what?
like directly on your mouth.
We're gonna share a microphone,
Okay.
but repeat what you just said, Henry, because that's very interesting.
Yeah, so obviously one of his occupations in his life was as a jazz critic, and when he was in Oxford, he one of the things he would do with his friends and his friend group, they called themselves the Seven.
Oh yeah, I heard about that.
And they would just go to pubs and drink and listen to jazz, and he played a bit of jazz because his dad got him a drum kit when he was young. And
From what I heard, he got him a drum kit, and the drum kit was making too much of a racket in this family household, so then he substituted it for a saxophone. So he played at least two jazz instruments. Interesting, huh? Well, he did become famous. I mean, I guess we've covered that, but he became hugely famous eventually, and he was seen as a voice of, I guess, the everyday. I don't know. Sometimes I think of him in the same light as Bukowski. People say Bukowski was the rapper. What do they say? They say he's the laureate of the low life. He was a representation of American working class vulgarity and just the honest, roughness of that lifestyle that obviously still exists and probably always will. Larkin wasn't that. I mean, Larkin was a middle class. He was pretty. He's kind of he wasn't an edgy person per se. But he did capture an everyday ordinariness, and I don't know. Britain's responded to that, and I don't think any other country could have produced him. I actually do believe that. He was offered the OBE, Order of the British Empire. Why wouldn't you like to have one of those? But he declined it, and he had a series of relationships that were always kind of ill-fated. The girl wanted to have a family. He didn't want to have a family. They ended up never marrying, but they were together for several years. Lotta. He did this several times, and he died unmarried and childless at the age of 63 in 1985.
Well, a lot of his sort of, when people think of him, he has a very distinct sort of gay image, and
What image?
sort of he's pictured as, obviously he has a very distinct, like, solemn, like, bleak.
There's
like,
quite a funny statue of him in Hull. I saw a picture of Wikipedia of him as a toad. Like they put his face onto that of a toad and a commemoration of his life in Hull, and it suits him quite well.
He is a toad.
It's so British, isn't it?
It is. Well, there's
the spectacled toad with the cardigan on.
Oh, there's certain people for whom pessimism suits them, and he was one of them. You need a bit of grumpiness, I think. I wouldn't recommend it personally, but from afar, it's sometimes enjoyable. I'm trying to think. There was a nickname he was given, the Miserable Man of Hull. That's what he was. That was the nickname he was given.
Sounds like a Smith song.
Yeah,
it does sound like a Smith song, doesn't it?
Yeah. So imagine that guy being your librarian as well. Just like a.
Well, it's funny because this is also just this is the archetype of librarians.
Yeah,
isn't it?
exactly.
This is how librarians.
Yeah.
Exactly. So he was. I mean, he was clearly made for the job. We'll get into his poetry because that's what the show is supposed to be about. But what more can you tell us about his life, Henry? Anything interesting?
Well, he was actually very sexually very active and very prolific in his life. Yeah, even though he died as a bachelor, and his image is that he's sort of a chud. Yeah. But he was actually not,
so to speak.
He was actually.
Our older audience is not going to know what he means by chud. But
he was quite experienced.
A chud is somebody who's neither interested in nor successful in their sexual endeavors.
So, there was one when he was in Leicester, and it was on and off for 35 years.
That's a long time.
Yeah, there's one. He was in he dated 2 girls in Belfast, and obviously in the main Hull arc, he had 3 women, and he was like on and off with all of them at the same time.
What do you know about the? What I kept finding, well, first of all, about 6 months ago, I watched a documentary on his life, and about a year before that, so last year, I read a collection of his poems, and then this week, to prepare for this episode, I read his Wikipedia page. So from what I remember of the documentary that I watched months ago, the reason they inevitably broke up is because he didn't want to have kids, and they did. Is that also what you encountered?
Well, obviously, as pretty evidently, he was pretty finicky with women, and he couldn't really adapt to it. So I suppose that's probably why that was the case. And a lot of them ended in incredible acrimony because he dated his secretary, for example, and he actually kept diaries which were destroyed and burned by his secretary after he died. So you'll never sort of know what really happened in his brain.
Have you heard about this one? So apparently, after he died, there was I don't want to be like a gossip, but after he died, there was his old friends were going through, Oxford friends presumably, and were going through his house, and they were okay. Well, what are maybe he has unfinished works here. We got to kind of figure out how to manage his estate. He is, of course, a very commercial and famous name. So what do we do with these unfinished works, whatever? And apparently what they found was this chest, and it was full of like all these like Nazi comic books.
Probably inherited from his dad.
Probably inherited from his dad, but it's quite funny.
Yeah.
But then apparently there's been academia is so they always want to find issue with somebody for political reasons. So there was this article about Larkin, the closeted Nazi, which is obviously not true.
He was of his time, so he was a bit racist.
Was he? Is there any evidence?
Yeah, there was
his hero was Louis Armstrong. Is there really any evidence that he was racist?
It's quite a bit on his Wikipedia page about some things I don't think I can say on air.
Oh, wow.
Oh, really?
Quite racist, yeah. There was like posthumously, they published some letters that he sent to his friends that his quote, revealed his obsession with pornography, with his racism, and his increasing shift to the political right wing.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it seems to be the case of a lot of these sort of Oxford fellows at the time. They started off quite left wing, and then eventually, sort of as the age moved towards conservatism. Obviously, like being Louis Armstrong doesn't really deny the fact that he also could carry simultaneously very racist views.
I suppose the two things are not mutually exclusive.
He had a love-hate relationship with.
I don't know.
Yeah, there's mixed sort of readings about
Okay.
his views on race. Again, no one's really going to know the truth because he is dead. But
What?
no one's really going to know.
He's
the
dead?
truth. What? No, Philip Larkin.
No.
What?
When did this happen?
He's doing one of his usual shticks.
I'm sorry. It's not funny.
You do this on air.
Yeah, this is what the people want to hear.
They want some more pranks. we don't have enough pranks.
Yeah.
Yeah, like Philip, because it's a very like sober topic. So if you're going to discuss it, I think you have to have some
brevity,
some gags to make the episode more interesting.
some judge. Well, speaking if we're finished with the gags, let's get serious. let's look
Okay,
at the poetry.
what do you? Oh, you want to read the
Let's do the
poetry?
poetry on the poetry show.
I don't. You know what? I didn't even think about that. Do you have any poems of his that you were particularly fond of, Henry, that you want to read for us?
I do indeed.
Okay, I haven't actually. It'd be funny if you picked the same ones as me.
It's called Church Ongoing. The Church Going.
The Church Going? Okay, go right ahead.
Okay, cool.
Once I am sure there's nothing going on, I step inside, letting the door thud shut. Another church, matting, seats, and stone, and little books, sprawlings of flowers cut. For Sunday, brownish now, some brass and stuff. Up at the holy end, the small neat organ, and a tense, musty, unignorable silence. Brood God knows how long. Hatless, I take off my cycle clips in awkward reverence. Move forward, run my hand around the fonts. From where I stand, the roof looks almost new. Cleaned or restored. Someone would know, I don't. Mounting the lectern, I peruse a few hectoring large-scale verses and pronounce, "Here endeth," much more loudly than I meant. The echoes snigger briefly. Back at the door, I signed the book, donate an Irish sixpence. Reflect the place was not worth stopping for. Yet stop I did. In fact, I often do, and always end much at a loss like this. Wondering what to look for, wondering too. When churches fall completely out of use, what we shall turn them into, what we shall keep. A few cathedrals chronically on show. Their parchment, plate, and picks in locked cases, and let the rest rent-free to rain and sheep. Shall we avoid them as unlucky places? Or after dark, will dubious women come to make their children touch a particular stone? Pick simples for a cancer, or on some advised night, see walking a dead one? Power of some sort or other will go on in games, in revels, seemingly at random. But superstition, like belief, must die. And what remains when this belief has gone? Grass, weedy pavement, brambles, buttress, sky. A shape less recognizable each week. A purpose much more obscure. I wonder who will be the last, the very last, to seek this place for what it was, one of the crew. That tap and jot know what rude lofts were? Some ruined bibber, randy for antique, or a Christmas addict, counting on a whiff, of gown and bands, and organ pipes, and myrrh, or will he be my representative? Bored, uninformed, knowing the ghostly silt, dispersed, yet tending to this cross of ground. Through suburb scrub because it held and split, so long and equably was since is found. Only in separation, marriage, and death, and thoughts of these, for which was built. This special shell, for though I've no idea what this accoutred frowsty barn is worth, it pleases me to stand in silence here. A serious house on serious earth it is, in whose blent air all our compulsions meet, are recognized and robed as destinies, and that much never can be obsolete. Since someone will forever be surprising, a hunger in himself to be more serious, and gravitating with it to this ground, which he once heard was proper to grow wise in, if only that so many that lie around.
Thank you.
It was very nice.
It was very nice. There was a sense of, well, it's very reflective. I think there's a big theme of memory. Seems like something an old person would write.
It is, and you can see again, like, the difference between like their anti-modernism, how plain this language is. It's all describing. It's very descriptive and very sort of bare, but it's in that simplicity that is sort of the sort of quiet contemplation of the poem.
Yeah, there's definitely there's a bleakness to it. There's no doubt about that. But there's also a couple of images that stood out to me as particularly relatable. There was one about, it said, churches abandoned, only the most prominent, I'm paraphrasing, I don't know how it actually went, but churches abandoned, only the most prominent cathedrals remaining, flocked by tourists. I don't know how you worded it, but something like that.
No,
which is yeah, which is, you think of the changing cityscape of an English or of a British city.
That was like a big theme of the work, wasn't it? Sort of the progression of, even after, like, the progression of life and sort of the disillusionment they had with modern life as well, which seems to keep coming up. The changing British and this desire to return, not desire, but the appeal of the rural, of nature coming back. I mean,
yeah, I don't know. In Larkin, I almost don't even get an alternative proposed. I almost get from him just kind of like a lament for like the way of modernity has unfolded, and nothing else. I don't get I don't see like a kind of positive
no, I think
sentiment or a yearning.
Well, kind of a so it goes kind of sentiment towards how life has progressed.
Well, they say all philosophical and artistic sentiments are autobiographical. So maybe that's a projection of his own life and how his own life unfolded.
I think for the past few weeks, we've done obviously reactions to modernity as poetry movements, and all of them sort of have this sort of mystical or sort of radical sort of lens to look into it or to recover what's lost from modernity, or to lament on it. But this is sort of very describing how it is. It's a realist.
That's perhaps a good way of putting it. The works of Larkin and Amos, as we'll get into. Amos is a little bit more cheerful, but there is a bleak honesty. It feels very. Of course, it's still a subjective interpretation of the world around them, but it is nonetheless feels as if it's trying to be genuine, for better or worse. Okay, I'm gonna read his most famous poem. Side by side, their faces blurred, the Earl and Countess lie in stone, their proper habits vaguely shown, as jointed armor, stiffened pleat, and that faint hint of the absurd, the little dogs under their feet. Such plainness of the pre-Baroque hardly involves the eye until it meets his left hand, gauntlet, still, clasped empty in the other, and one sees, with a sharp tender shock, his hand withdrawn, holding her hand. They would not think to lie so long, such faithfulness in effigy was just a detail friend would see, a sculptor's sweet commissioned grace, thrown off in helping to prolong the Latin names around the base. They would not guess how early in their supine stationary voyage the air would change to soundless damage, to turn the old tenantry away. How soon succeeding eyes begin to look, not read, rigidly they persisted, linked through lengths and breadths of time. Snow fell, undated, light. Each summer throned the glass, a bright litter of bird calls strewed the same bone-riddled ground, and up the paths the endless altered peoples came, washing at their identity, now helpless in the hollow of an unarmorial age, a trout of smoke and slow suspended skeins. Above their scrape of history, only an attitude remains. Time has transfigured them into untruth. The stone fidelity they hardly meant has come to be their final blazon, and to prove our almost instinct almost true, what will survive of us is love.
It's a very good poem.
It's very beautiful.
It's an amazing last line.
It's very funny because the last line seems so antithetical to the rest of the poem, which is kind of doubting this expression of eternal love of these these crypt figures.
Well, I did a little research on this one, so I know the secret.
I was going to say it also seems very against what we've been saying about the movement,
the cynicism of daily life.
Well, there's two people buried outside of a church, right? And they have a tombstone, a plaque, where their names are in, and they're, an eternal embrace under the earth. And people walk by, and time passes by, and think the stone is weathered, and they're forgotten, and they fade into history and into untruth, to use Larkin's words. But what will remain of them is love. Or he says, what will remain of us is love, which almost makes you feel as if, first of all, either Larkin is saying this will one day be us, and then that meaning that the poem is written in first person and it's addressed to his lover, or that he's saying we, like them, are doomed to the still same fate, but what will survive of us is love, just as that is true for them. It is sweet. And I found it very interesting that you pointed out that last sentiment, the last line that the poem ends on, seems to be distinct from the sentiment found throughout the rest of it. The reason for that is actually his girlfriend at the time came up with it.
Wow.
So he wrote it, and he thought, I don't know how to end it. And then she read it, and she said, well, what about ending it on the note of eternal love, or the legacy of love? And he said, okay.
I think that makes it so much.
It defines the whole poem. It's his most famous poem, and what is most famous about this poem is its ending.
Yeah.
And he didn't come up with it. She did.
Very interesting.
I think that's really interesting. I think the sort of cynicism of it makes it so much more powerful, kind of as a, if you consider it as a love poem. It's so much more moving, I suppose.
Yeah, it's almost despite the rest of the poem.
Yeah, exactly.
It ends in this way. Yeah.
Well,
let's hear about Kingsley Amis. He has a more... Well, I don't need to tell you. You'll be the ones telling us. But he has a more interesting life in some regards.
Yeah, he's much more comic as well, I think, in his poetry. A lot more humor.
Yeah.
In it. But, Leo, do you want to...
I can begin, yeah. So he's born in 1922 in Clapham. His family is fairly wealthy. His dad is... he works for Coleman's Mustard. I think he's in charge of like importing.
I just applied yesterday.
I think he's in charge of exports to South America, which didn't realize there was a big market there. But he's born into this.
Well, you know they call Brazil the mustard capital of the world.
He's in a fairly wealthy family. He grows up and is educated well. He goes to the City of London school. I think he has a scholarship rather than paying to go there, but still an incredibly good private school in London. And then gets a scholarship to Oxford, where, like it's already been mentioned, he meets Philip Larkin. I think not long after this, he does actually get drafted into the army, but it's not for very long, and I don't think he actually has to fight. But then, similar to Larkin, he has a few years teaching at different universities, working there. But unlike Larkin, he does have children, and he's, I wouldn't say stable in any relationships, but he sustains relationships much better than Larkin does. But that's really, really not a very high bar. Yeah, he has multiple marriages. All of them fall apart because of his essentially inability to stay away from adultery.
He's a philanderer.
Yes, yeah. And yeah, he's quite successful in terms of, interestingly, compared to Larkin, not really his poetry, mainly his novels. He writes, I think it's about 25 novels between 1954 and when he dies in 1995. But he only has a few collections of poetry.
Yeah, his poetry is far less talked about, and he was part of, for his novels, the Angry Young Men movement of the 1950s, which is, again, this sort of 50s kind of droll British kitchen sink dramas, sort of comes from that same time. But again, his poetry is far less talked about. He has first novel, Lucky Jim, was very well received, and it was about campus life. Campus life? He was a lecturer in Swansea in Wales for quite a few years, and it's based off of his time there. And again, I think some people regard that as one of the first British campus novels to be published. 1953, 54.
Yeah, 54. What about Brideshead Revisited?
I'm not sure when that was. When was that published? I know it was
40s. Right?
40s.
I think this is one of the
first.
Sure.
I think Brideshead Revisited might be published after. I don't know. I know some things were written before, but then published after. I think Maurice also was a campus novel.
Decline and Fall. It's kind of one too.
Yeah. But I mean, I think this is like a big break because he was very popular as a writer among the British public. But again, I think what is notable about him is, again, his serial adultery. I think, as in his sort of incredible amount of relationships.
He's got quite a few vices, really, hasn't he?
He's also an alcoholic. Oh, very bad alcoholic.
An interesting thing he says, I think it might be a bit later in his career, but the only way he was able to write was he would set the mornings for writing. He'd have to write 500 words every morning, at least. Once he'd hit that quota, usually about lunchtime, the drinking began, and then it didn't end.
The fun commences.
Okay, so that's
that's like my life, but
without any of the writing.
That's what Anthony Burgess did that, but he pushed it till 2000. He's attempted to. Well, he was extremely successful because he wrote like, I don't know, something like 10 novels in the span of like 4 or 5 years in the early 60s, between 1959 and like 1964. And he would write 2,000 words in the morning, and then after maybe, I think by 2 o'clock he was at the pub.
Yeah.
Yes, lad.
Yeah, it's a good life.
Mm-hmm. He did have 3 kids.
Yeah,
3 kids.
I think so.
One of them was Martin Amis. To be honest, I don't know very much about him, even though he's very famous.
Neither do I.
Really?
Yeah.
No, I mean we can leave that to you.
He's still alive, isn't he?
Yeah.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, of course he's like, what is he? 73. Okay, I've just looked it up. Yeah, anybody listening to this will know he's a very famous novelist.
But towards the end of his life, he actually ended up living with his ex-wife and her 3rd husband, who was the 7th Baron of Kilmarnock, because he was, in severe decline from age and alcoholism. That his their sons were like, you need someone to take care of him, and then he fell after having a stroke and then died in 1995. What a life!
The decline and fall.
The decline and fall.
Yeah. Well. It's interesting that he's associated with the Angry Young Men because there's no famous writer, but I can't remember his name. But he's not that famous, but he wrote a book that takes place here in Leeds, in 1957. But I cannot remember. I remember the plot, but I don't remember the name of the book or the author's name, unfortunately. But he was also very much associated with the Angry Young Men movement, which was very much like I guess it's about the monotony of post-war British life. But it's also about class struggle.
Yes.
And the inability of the working class to, there's a new order that emerges after the war. And it's so supposedly there's, more meritocratic and less characterized by, no, it's not that guy.
Okay.
It's not that guy. And it's supposedly less characterized by like this, station of your birth or whatever. But of course that's not the case in reality. There's still people who are unable to ameliorate themselves. And so.
Yeah, I feel like I'm more familiar with Angry Young Men with the film. It was also in movies, like Tony Richardson's films.
Okay, the novel I have in mind was made into a film, so maybe we know it.
Is it Look Back in Anger?
I don't think it's Look Back in Anger. It's like, crap. It's kind of part of like British New Wave cinema. It's kind of like Brief Encounter, but it's not Brief Encounter. But basically, it's the premise is that like this working class guy from Ilkley or Shipley or something goes to like the big city and tries to become a businessman.
So like Billy Liar.
He gets like a rich girl pregnant, and then the dad's like, well, you can marry her and you can join our family, but you got to work for me forever. And then he's like, Room at the Top. That's what it's called.
There we go.
Yes, Room at the Top. Who's
John Brain?
John Brain. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, yeah.
So he goes from being owned in one way to owned in another. Is the pessimism of it.
Yes.
Sorry, this is not Kingsley Amis though.
It's related.
It's contextual, I suppose. To that kind of
Lucky Jim. Have you ever you guys read Lucky Jim?
No.
Have you read? Okay, you should really. I don't. Forget Kingsley Amis. You should really read Martin Amis.
Okay.
You should read his novel Money.
Okay.
Like Money. What is it? 1984. It's kind of like Bret Easton Ellis.
All right.
It's like kind of the excesses of 80s kind of consumerism, capitalism.
Right.
Takes place on Wall Street in New York. It's very funny.
Oh, the full title is Money: A Suicide Note. Interesting.
Edgy.
And it's like a novel about the making of a film, but the film never gets made, and it's one of those things.
Metatextual.
A bit.
Speaking of metatextual, I'd like to read one of Kingsley Amis's poems.
Please.
Which is about poetry. And it's called Something Nasty in the Bookshop. I feel kind of awful having my American accent reading these because they're such British poems, but I'll give it a shot.
You can put one on.
I'm not doing that. Sound like a parody. Anyways, this is...
So when you're born in Hong Kong, do you choose to have an American or British accent?
No, I mean, it depends on what sometimes it depends on the schools you go to, but it just kind of just happened. I don't know, too much YouTube probably. But,
So people in Hong Kong.
The older generation tend to have a more British accents.
Okay,
because
interesting.
of kind of colonial teachers, but like I don't know. I the school I went to, for some reason, everyone developed American accents. Anyways.
Yes. Okay. Go on.
Okay. Between the gardening and the cookery comes the brief poetry shelf. By the none such done, a thin anthology offers itself. Critical and with nothing else to do, I scan the contents page, relieved to find the names are mostly new, no one my age. Like all strangers, they divide by sex. Landscape near Parma interests a man, so does the double vortex, so does Rilke and Buddha. I travel, you see, I think and I can read, these titles seem to say. But I remember you, love is my creed, poem for J. The lady's choice, discountenance my patter for several seconds. From somewhere in this, as in any matter, a moral beckons. Should poets bicycle pump the human heart or squash it flat? Man's love is of man's life a thing apart. Girls aren't like that. We men have got love well weighed up. Our stuff can get by without it. Women don't seem to think that's good enough. They write about it. And the awful way their poems lay them open just doesn't strike them. Women really are much nicer than men. No wonder we like them. Deciding we can forget those times we stayed up half the night, chock full of love, crammed with bright thoughts, names, rhymes, and couldn't write. So, you can kind of see his comic sentiment.
I love that, like Shel Silverstein.
Yeah, there's kind of a
rhyme schemes.
Yeah, and it's kind of absurd. It's about sort of this perceived like gender divide and the way poetry is marketed towards men and women, which I think nowadays in the age where no one is really reading poetry seems kind of very funny to me.
Yeah.
Again, it's
I don't. Do you think you don't think anybody reads poetry anymore?
I think we a dwindling amount.
Yeah,
so to
and
the point
I don't know.
where,
I feel like everybody I know reads poetry.
Yeah, well, you're biased. You run a poetry radio show.
All right.
You refuse to have friends that don't.
Yeah, you refuse to engage.
But we're going to talk about football.
Yeah, exactly. But like again, this idea that like men are more interested in poetry that's like intellectual. Women are more interested in like emotional love poetry. I think that the idea is sort of. I mean, I think you could maybe see the idea in other mediums, but specifically in poetry, it's like if you're reading poetry at all, you're kind of just in a different realm.
I think you could. He's kind of been proven right in a way by the more modern. I'd like to put this in inverted commas. Poets like people like Rupi Kaur that get the big backing of these publishers, and I mean.
You call that poetry?
Well, I don't, but
that's just nonsense.
Well, yeah, but this is it's poetry nowadays being marketed as, I don't know. It's all about personal feelings, about those kind of emotions, and I think it's often female writers and being marketed to women.
Right.
Yeah.
Just in the way it's presented. You just don't seem to see any poets that are. I don't know, anywhere near as serious as these older poets.
Have you guys ever heard of this poem? It's like there's two words. It's a she believed he lied.
Oh
come on.
God, no! Let's not
get into that. But I mean, I don't want to. So obviously, there's a kind of narrative I don't really enjoy here. This idea of like, women only write sentimental, sappy stuff, whereas men are real thinkers. But there's an irony in the last part of the poem where we stayed up half the night, well presumably the we is men, chock full of love, crammed with bright thoughts, names and rhymes, and couldn't write. And there's an implication of not that you don't want to write about emotional stuff. There's kind of like there's like a cynicism and a skepticism here, but kind of I saw this in referral to An Arundel Tomb, the poem you read earlier with Philip Larkin. But one of these people reviewing it was like, there seems to be skepticism towards things that he just can't help but have an appetite for. And I find that to be the thing I find most interesting about their poems is this cynicism, but still an inability to kind of draw yourself away from it.
Nobody thinks about love more than the lonely man.
Yeah.
Okay,
there's like
I
there's
can see that.
no like sort of withdrawal to asceticism or something like that, or like horrible stoicism. Right?
Yeah. Okay. All right.
I think that's the vulnerability I find more interesting about the poem.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Kingsley was knighted.
I actually didn't know that.
Yeah.
He do we want to go back into some more of his life?
I mean, yeah. If you've got.
I mean, we'll talk about when he was at Oxford. He joined the Communist Party of Great Britain. But not very long after, I mean, maybe a decade later, he's decided to break with communism as an ideology, and slowly he became more and more right wing. And I think by the 70s, you know, he's even like supporting the US's war effort in Vietnam. Like he really betrays his early ideals. Yeah, a 180. And I think, you know, we said a similar thing about Larkin. I do think it's interesting that these people are kind of so interested and so such advocates of left-wing ideology whilst they're young, and then by the time they're, you know, not that much older, they're already these kind of very stereotypical conservative Brits.
You know the old expression? You know what I'm going to say. If you, how does it go? If you're not a leftist when you're young, you have no soul. If you're not a right wing when you're old, you have no brain.
Okay, yeah, I have heard that one. Yeah,
bumper sticker. But I mean, yeah, it's quite a recurring theme. I feel like, especially with people or like figures of this time, especially in these sort of collegiate circles, where it's like, you know, within the environment of the campus, within the university, you have the expression of you are a leftist, and then the moment you're sort of out of it, you become conservative.
And I guess it's like you suddenly, with someone like this, you have a family, and now you've got something to lose. Whereas when you're a student, you don't really have anything, and so you can be more careless with other people's possessions, and then you get a little bit more inclined to keep your own things once you gain them.
Yeah.
So his concerning his family, he married Hilary Bardwell.
Yeah.
Did he have Martin Amis and his other children with her?
Yes, I think he had all 3 children.
Okay.
With her. Yep. Yeah. But they divorce in 1965 after Kingsley has an affair with the novelist Elizabeth Howard.
That's right.
In 1965.
The Cazalet Chronicle.
Yeah. And they marry not long after. But then, once again, another divorce. I think that's 1983. And yeah, like Hal mentioned earlier, a little bit later in his life, he ends up moving back in with Hilary.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and again, like Hal said, her third husband was the 7th Baron of Kilmarnock.
Why is that funny?
It's just a funny title for your
Baron of where?
Kilmarnock.
Kilmarnock.
I have no idea where that is.
It's in Scotland somewhere.
Oh, Scotland.
But yeah, just a really bizarre circumstance. I think, yeah, it just kind of defies belief that this person takes him in. You know, he's a raging alcoholic.
I'm now living with my
Yeah.
ex-wife's barren husband.
Yeah, that is. I guess that is kind of. Do you know what Christopher Hitchens said about Kingsley Amis?
No.
Said his alcoholism ruined his wit and charm.
That will happen.
Yeah.
I'm sure it does. So, he was not an alcoholic to begin with? This leads me to believe?
I don't know if it was as bad to begin with.
Sure.
I'm assuming whilst he was at uni, he was drinking, but I think it becomes more of a problem once he's an adult,
right,
properly.
Okay.
There's not much information really on when the problem began, but
sure. Okay.
He liked to drink.
Okay, and well, we got 10 minutes left. I'd love to hear some more of his poetry.
Do you have one?
Yeah, I'll read one. There's not many of them that I've read that are particularly long, so we might not be able to fill up 10 minutes fully. I'll read a short one called Wasted.
It's called Wasted.
Let's get.
That's
All
fitting.
right. Yep. Very. That cold winter evening, the fire would not draw, and the whole family hung over the dismal grate where rain-soaked logs bubbled, hissed, and steamed. Then, when the others had gone up to their chilly beds, and I was ready to go, the wood began to flame in clear rose and violet, heating the small hearth. Why should that memory cling, now the children are all grown up, and the house, a different house, is warm at any season?
I see. I think it's autobiographical.
It's very
Yeah.
sobering for a wasted poem.
So
I don't think it's about him being drunk.
no, you don't. So this is perhaps you could argue this is off topic, but I was just looking at the seventh Baron of Kilmarnock, Alistair Boyd, and he himself was also a writer.
Wow.
Yeah.
So she fancied writers.
Definitely. We don't know what her second husband did, but 2 out of 3 at least.
Yeah, writer's
so-
block probably.
Do we have anything else to say about his life?
Come on, you gotta.
He's
He's an interesting life. You got something to say.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. We've covered most of it. Oh, one thing that seems kind of out of place. He was a massive James Bond fan, and kind of wrote his own James Bond books for a while,
Yeah.
which I found a bit
Fan
strange.
fiction, like,
Kind of, yeah, pretty much fan fiction.
Yeah, he was a friend of Ian Fleming.
Yeah.
Which is, it's always interested me that like Ian Fleming, you know, today there's such a division between, you got your I don't know, Pattersons or whoever, Stephen King, and then this commercial side of literature, airport literature, which I think is a kind of a harsh term, but this very commercial realm of literature that sells well, and there's a stark division between that and the real stuff, you know, and then you got Donna Tartt and whoever, I don't know, you know, Julian Barnes, and the people people nowadays considered to be serious writers. But when you go back to the 50s, it's this division is less pronounced, I find.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I love coming across just like, you know, either like the Penguin or Pelican paperback books. There's just so many that were like, there is some like pulpy, terrible novels, but
Sure.
yeah, again, I think it's nowhere near as pronounced as it is now.
No, it's a very stark division now. I don't know. Maybe one of the reasons that poetry is not doing particularly well commercially, as we've alluded to, is the fact that like I don't think poetry lends itself to being commercial at all.
No.
And so like if you try to do that and you try to produce the poetry, the you know, I don't know, Zadie. Oh, I shouldn't say that because some people like Zadie Smith. The James Patterson of poetry. You end up with just shitty poetry. Like you're inevitably going to get something that's just not good.
Yeah. And I do think it's I don't know, there's less room for filler in poetry. A book can be entertaining and still not be very thought provoking or very good. But I think with poetry it's a much more difficult line to straddle. You know, there's if you're not doing something that's interesting, people just won't read it because it's never been the same as fiction. People have to have like a reason to read poetry. You've got to. It's always been viewed as something that's a bit more highbrow, and so you've got to convince people.
Yeah, it's something that sort of wants to be returned to, and
Yeah.
that's the thing with a lot of the so-called airport literature. There are things that are intentionally designed to pass the time that you kind of chuck. You're not thinking about whatever Patterson novel you're reading on a 10-hour flight. Like you buy it and then it's something to do and then it's over. Whereas poetry is sort of reflexive and you're supposed to come back to it and it's supposed to grow in meaning the more you read it.
But you know, this leads me to believe that this is the exact time that we needed a new poetry movement.
Yeah,
because
I agree.
there's this so-called attention economy. People on their phones scrolling through nonsense, reading the news. I mean, wouldn't it be very fitting? Wouldn't it be unsurprising to look back and read a Wikipedia article that says something like, "Oh, this is like kind of slow poetry that was heavy in imagery and floral language, and it was a reaction against this kind of fast-paced news, heavily politicized world we live in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's what we do in Leeds School of Poetry.
Is it?
I mean, speaking of flowery language, I want to close off this with Kingsley Amis' poem, which lambasts the flowery language of the modernist movement.
Okay, let's hear it.
So it's quite funny. It's called Wrong Words. Half shut, our eye dawdles down the page, seeing the words love, the word death, the word life, rhyme words of poets in a silver age, silver of the bauble, not of the knife. Too fluent, drenching with confectionery, one image, one event's hard outline, the words of failures voluptuary, descant around love, love of a routine. There follow high words from a thwarted child, rightly denied what it would foul, threatening grown-ups with its death, eager to gild the pose of writhing with the pose of resigning. But loneliness, the word never said, pleads to be recognized through their conceits. Behind the frantic distortion lies the dread, unforced, unblurred, of real defeats. Their real ladies would not follow the book, wrong ladies, happy with wrong words, wrong lives, careening now. They blazed while none would look, the distressing signals of their superlatives.
Very polemical.
Very polemical, yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. So he's saying the problem with poetry is it's too floral.
Yeah,
there's too much of an
too much faff.
Too much faff. And that can be attributed to the female dollar. Is what he's saying?
Yeah. Maybe again.
Yeah.
Okay.
He was
What a-
criticized for misogyny.
For being a misogynist, and you can really see why.
Oh yeah.
So Kingsley and his son Martin would their whole life they referred to each other. He referred to his father by his first name. Like, hey Kingsley, how's it going? Oh, good, Martin, how are you? And they apparently would get drunk together, and they were like buddies, and they were like competitive writers.
Probably competitive drinkers as well.
They probably competitive drinkers. Well. There's only of course, there's only maybe 1 or 2 decades in which their careers overlap, but nevertheless, they were apparently had a very strange relationship.
That's interesting.
Friends, really.
Yeah. But friends and
competitors.
Competitors is a
With your
really
own
weird
dad.
dynamic with your dad. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a difficult footsteps to follow.
Yeah.
Well, he succeeded. I think
That's true.
Like Martin is more. Well, I guess this could be debated, but I think he's probably. I think you could probably say that he was more successful than his father, or at least equally. But okay, so we got 1 minute left. I think we have there's one more episode of Leeds Student Radio.
Yeah.
Before the summer semester, before the semester ends. So, would you guys like to do The Fairy Queen by Edmund Spenser or something else? What do you want to do?
I'd be happy to do that. We can think of something else as well. Because I don't know if that's going to be a full hour.
Your idea was that we read our own poetry, but I don't want to.
The unfortunate thing is that I will not be here for the last one because I'm in Glasgow.
Ooh.
Oh, you have a concert in Glasgow, right?
Henry's on tour.
Yeah. Yeah, he plays a slide whistle.
Actually, wait.
Your kalimba game is unbeatable.
While we're on air, let me just say this. Let me